Welcome everyone, Christine here on Serious Gaming with another political discussion video. And as usual, we get a politician talking about the internet and the rules that govern the internet without knowing what the hell they're really all about. In this case, it's Joe Biden in an interview with the New York Times, where he pretty much called for the current law that governs how internet companies are held liable for content that their users upload on their sites to be revoked. So, from the New York Times, let's read on this. Mr. Vice President, in October, your campaign sent a letter to Facebook regarding an ad that falsely claimed that you blackmailed Ukrainian officials to not investigate your son. I'm curious, did that experience dealing with Facebook and their power, did that change the way you see the power of tech platforms right now? And he says that he's never been a fan of Facebook, and that when asked to elaborate, he knows better. You know, from my perspective, I've been in the view that not only should we be worried about the concentration of power, we should be worried about the lack of privacy and them being exempt, which are not exempt. The Times can't write something you know to be false and be exempt from being sued, but he can. The idea that it's a tech company is that Section 230 should be revoked. Immediately should be revoked, number 1, for Zuckerberg and other platforms. Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act says that online platforms aren't held liable for things their users post on them, with some exceptions. In July, the Times' Sarah Zhang weighed in on proposed updates to Section 230, arguing that we should reopen the debate only because so much of the internet has changed. But the discourse will be improved if we all take a moment to actually read the text of the section. And when the interviewer mentions that's pretty foundational laws of the modern internet. That's right, exactly right, and it should be revoked. It should be revoked because it's not merely an internet company. It's propagating falsehoods they know to be false, and we should be setting standards, not unlike the Europeans are doing relative to privacy. You guys still have editors. I'm sitting with them. Not a joke. There's no editorial impact at all on Facebook. None whatsoever. It's irresponsible. Totally irresponsible. If there's proven harm that Facebook has done, should someone like Mark Zuckerberg be submitted to criminal penalties, perhaps? He should be submitted to civil liability and his company to civil liability, just like you would be here at the New York Times. Whether he engaged in something and amounted to collusion that in fact caused harm, that would in fact be equal to a criminal offense. That's a different issue. That's possible. That's possible it could happen. Zuckerberg finally took down those ads that Russia was running, all those bots. They're no longer being run. A second ad up here though, right? And now this is related to events that happened in October, late October. And then he's talking about Silicon Valley, and what's really revealing here is this particular point. At one point, one of those little creeps sitting around that table who was close to a billionaire, told me he was an artist because he was able to come up with games who teach you how to kill people, you know, the video games. And I was lectured by one of the senior leaders there by saying if I insisted on what he put to I thought we were going to fully support, that they would blow up the network, figuratively speaking, have everybody contact. They get out and go out and contact the switch, or just blow it up. And then one of those righteous people said to me, you know, we are the economic engine of America. We are the ones. Now, this goes on, and the interview does touch on quite a lot of other issues, and I certainly recommend you check it out because it is fairly revealing about Joe Biden. But this is, like, it's not surprising. Here you have an old dude that really doesn't understand the internet or video games or what they're about or what the industry is about, and yet this is one of the fundamental problems when dealing with the internet or the industry, is that for many years there was a fairly lax approach to the internet, and now there are restrictions being imposed. Both of them are the wrong way. Because on one hand, you've gotten companies like Facebook, Google, and to an extent Twitter gaining a lot of power and prominence. But the problem is those restrictions that are being proposed right now would completely screw over the internet. And when I say screw over the internet, I'm not saying that Facebook or Twitter or YouTube would really suffer. I'm talking in a sense that internet users would suffer. And a lot of people that work on the internet and depend on the internet for their jobs, you know, content creators on YouTube, influencers, whatever you want to call them, or, you know, just people who make use of it in more ways than one would also be impacted by this. Because the way Safe Harbor works, just to explain, the Safe Harbor works under the idea that the content that users upload to your platforms is not something that you, as an internet company, should be held liable for. Now, this includes copyrighted content, or in this particular case, political falsehoods, as Biden calls them, designed to hurt his campaign, political propaganda. The problem is he's looking at Facebook as if it's a news editorial, but that's not true under any view. Facebook is not the news. I mean, sure, it spreads the news, but it's not the news organization. It's not really a media organization like CNN or New York Times or Washington Post. It doesn't have journalists. It doesn't do editorials. And yet Joe Biden's looking at it because he's angry over a particular ad. He wants to restrict their power. Now, look, there's a lot of issues with Facebook. There's a lot of issues with Google. There's a lot of issues with these companies and the power they have. But what Joe Biden here is proposing to change the law, revoke a particular section that is in many ways the foundation of the modern internet, revoke the safe harbor provision, and instead implement restrictions. Now he's doing it from a different angle than what, say, Europe has done recently, because Europe has also done it. Now in Europe's case, the reason Europe did it is because of a spat between the social media companies and the music and film industry. That's really the big takeaway, especially the music industry, who really wanted restrictions and so that they could gain financially more and gain a bigger share of the pie. Biden and the Democrats in the United States, I mean, there were articles saying Nancy Pelosi had a similar view recently, especially involving the USCA, the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, the free trade agreement recently signed in relation to safe harbor provision. And the reason behind it is due to and the reason that seems to be driving the Democrats in the United States is not necessarily just the music industry or the film industry, though you can bet that these industries would very much enjoy that the safe harbor provision be taken down. But what seems to be the reasons they're motivated to act on this is because of fake news, because of the power that these companies have, especially on the political process, because they're angry about 2016. They're angry about what's happening now. They want Facebook to take down that ad, and they want Facebook to intervene and decide. And in effect, they want certain standards to be adopted by the social media companies. Now, there's a whole political debate that can be discussed here, is like whether or not social media should be able to choose that. I mean, they already do. Let's be clear on this. They already do. They already pick winners and losers. They're already involved in this process, and what is and what isn't permissible. And what Democrats like Biden, what Democrats like Pelosi want is them to do that more. Well, that's not really a solid way of doing democracy from my perspective. But more importantly, it wouldn't actually fix the issue. Because the moment you make Facebook liable, what is Facebook going to do? What is YouTube going to do? What is Google going to do? What are they all going to do? Are they going to provide us with sensical reporting, quote unquote? No. What they're going to do is clamp down on a lot of controversial topics, controversial content. We've seen this with YouTube. Every time that there's restrictions imposed on YouTube, has YouTube suffered as a company? Has YouTube paid the price? Have things really gotten better? No, no, and no. What really has gotten worse, however, is the fact that a lot of people on these websites, regular users, content creators, all that, have suffered immensely, because that's how the model is designed. Now, that doesn't mean that Google, Facebook, Twitter should be exempt from action. But here's the problem: these politicians are suggesting changes because of 1, 2, 3 companies, and the problem is they're making changes for everyone. Every forum, every website, every place on the internet you can visit would be held under these rules. And it applies to a lot of things: copyrighted content, in this case, political content, political discussion. And who exactly gets to decide what is and what isn't permissible? The government? The politicians? These media companies? It's a big problem that needs to be solved, but Joe Biden has no clue what he's really talking about. He's doing it because he's angry at Facebook over an ad, because he wants this whole thing to go away. He feels it would hurt his campaign, he's willing to act on it. And let's not ignore the presence of the music industry. So what's the caveat in all of it? Is there any good news out of this? So you have one major party candidate who's likely to be the nominee of the Democratic Party advocating this. You have Democrats, including Pelosi, arguing on this. What's the good news? Well, the good news is that the USMCA, the new free trade agreement that is going to replace NAFTA, that's already been passed by Congress, by the U.S. House of Representatives, has passed the Senate, is going to be signed by Trump, is already ratified by Mexico, will soon be ratified by Canada. The USMCA in the treaty includes the safe harbor provision. The very thing that Joe Biden want to screw over in his foolishness is the very thing that is going to be protected under the USMCA. You can thank Justin Trudeau, based on the information we have out there, that apparently the Canadians were the ones that really wanted the safe harbor provision included in the USMCA. Apparently, I don't quite know that for certain. So I don't know what to say on that. But yeah, it is discouraging because to see Democrats, to see politicians in the mainstream political, many politicians on the left, many politicians in the center adopting these rule changes, either because they're angry at Facebook, which obviously is a problem and should be dealt with in more ways than one. Absolutely should be dealt with. But if you're going to screw over the safe harbor provisions, then the impact is not really going to be felt that much by Facebook or YouTube. And instead, it's going to be felt by regular internet users and by people who pretty much make a living on these websites, right? And it's not going to solve the issue. I can't say what the solution would be to do with Facebook or YouTube or Google. Antitrust. Break it down because they each have a monopoly in different ways. They're very big companies. They're very powerful companies, and they need to be taken down a peg one way or another. But this is simply not a solution. You can't basically take a shotgun approach to dealing with Facebook. That's really what the problem is. It's also a dishonest way because Biden's saying he's against 230, but you can bet your ass that there's a lot of people who are doing it because of the money that the music and film industry have banking on it. And all of it, they don't care about how much they screw over the internet. All the movie and music industry care about is that it would give them leverage in their negotiations with YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Costin here, signing off. Thank you all for watching. Stay tuned for more. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications to be updated when I'm uploading new content. Special thanks to Chia Chang Lin, to all my patrons, and to all of you who make this possible. Stay tuned, everyone.